Looking to get creative? Well, stick around for some tips and tricks on today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet. I'm John Paulus. Thanks for joining me today. As usual, I will shuffle the Life's Potluck Buffet card deck to find out what the cards think about, well, how do we get creative? What are some good tips? What's a good prompt, a good exercise, a good thought experiment that we might do that's going to get us going and getting creative? Okay, here we are. Cards, we're ready. All right, so I'm going to shuffle them 3 times. Casual shuffle. And then one last time. Stepping away from the microphone. All right. Okay, and then I will look for a gap in the cards and finding... I lost it. I think it's this one. And finding that gap, I will turn over the card and see what the answer is to how to get creative. All right, the answer is card 4. Be like a good novelist. Show, don't tell. Instead of using words to describe your work, create a project that you show others. Meet people of a specific work community related to it. Ask friends, acquaintances, or family to introduce you to people. Sign up for an email list or join a communication platform of that community. Interact with people in it. Now, say a project that you want to show others. All right, so that is our prompt for today on how to get creative. Well, the card actually has the word create in it. Create a project. So I appreciate that. I mean, these cards are always coming up with the best answers. This deck is truly magical. So instead of using words to describe your work, create a project. This is kind of interesting because this is a little bit tied into yesterday's episode where I talked about creating an action instead of using words and claims. It was actions speak, if you remember that episode from yesterday. If you don't, take a look. I think that'll be really helpful. So today's thought is that those same actions need to have a little bit of flair. So my suggestion here as to how to create a project is to take a moment right now and think about 3 things that come to mind. We use that rule of 3 from Life's Potluck Buffet. Think of 3 things that just come to mind immediately, no matter what they are, and write them down. And in those 3 things, look for something towards the third thing. I feel like the first and second things, we're tending to warm up, we just get things out there. And then go to the third thing and start from there. And see if there's anything in there that is reflected in the first 2 things as well. It may not be, but just check. And if it is, if the third thing that you wrote down for what you want to do in terms of the project here, if that third thing is reflected in the first 2 things, then that's you refining the project that you're doing. If you're satisfied with where it is, then start the project with that goal that you've written down, the third goal. If you're not satisfied, if you feel like, I was just kind of developing the same project, then do the same thing again, but starting with the third goal. So as I was thinking about this for myself just now, I thought about a project I did that was a little bit of a design project to do with graphic design. And it involved, and it was for a public presentation. And it was for someone else's public presentation, not my own. So this was trying to get this a sense of what would best represent and best kind of captivate the audience that that person was working with. And so that graphic design project was something I thought of in terms of how to get creative. And for me, the kind of parameters that I used as I thought about this were kind of thinking about how to create a certain aesthetic vibe. And it was a kind of very much a kind of cute aesthetic that I was going for, um, because of the goal of the project and so forth. And so I think thinking about what your signature way of approaching the project you're talking about is in terms of your style is key. Unless it's a project that is for a specific audience, which I think that would be great to figure out here, is who is the audience for your project and what do they need the project to look like in a sense, or what do you best think that they're going to respond to in your project. So thinking about that is kind of step two. Once you've figured out what the project is that you're going to do, and it could be tiny, it could be small, it could be a big project, but odds are it's probably going to be something doable because you wouldn't come up with it. It's very rare, I've found over the years, that people come up with ideas that are completely beyond their reach, just because people think of even people's wildest dreams are attainable by them. They really are, because we think our dreams are wild because we would be thrilled if they happened. But if you step back and just imagine, just talk to somebody else and see with their dreams, and you say, oh, wow, your dreams are really attainable. How come my dreams aren't attainable? Well, that's because you're listening to them talk about their dreams and you're not judging the way that you judge your own dreams. We often judge our dreams and find ourselves wanting in the process. And we don't do that with other people, or at least we don't tend to. Most of the time, we're very generous as people when we hear people's dreams, and we hear it, and they don't sound outlandish. They don't sound ludicrous or crazy. They sound like, wow, that's something that you can accomplish. So these projects that you're thinking of, odds are, I have a feeling that the project you're thinking of is something you can accomplish. Now, if it's a big one, that's great. I always love it when people start with a big vision. And I've talked a lot to people about this. Starting at the biggest scale is something that is essential in my experience. Because if you start at the smallest scale of your project and you can't scale up. And that's why we're always like trying to grasp at this thing of like scaling things up, and it's kind of, we always feel like, oh, it's kind of slipping away. How do you scale this up? Aiming to do something to scale and understanding what that scale is, and understanding that has to be the biggest scale. Otherwise, you're designing something for a very small scale thing, and then like the biggest level scale, you can't reach it because it's already designed for a small scale. And the idea that you can just somehow enlarge this into a big scale, just, think about anything in life. I don't know. Think about a lamp. Make a small lamp. Does that same lamp function if you did it 1,000 times its size? Yeah, it just becomes a kind of oddity, right? It's just a very, very large lamp that you don't, have it. It doesn't. Its use is no longer there, and also just making it larger doesn't do anything because its function goes away because everything has a function that is appropriate to its size and scale. So having the size and scale correct for the size of the vision of your project is something that I talk to people a lot about. And then you can actually see what it's going to take to carry out that project. Because if it's a very large scale project, it is going to take, obviously, time, money, people helping and getting on board. That's a big project, but it has to be at the scale that its final scale to begin with. Otherwise, it's that problem with designing a lamp and then just like enlarging it 1,000 times and being like, ta-da! Now I have the better version of this lamp and the scaled version of this lamp, but instead you just have something that's not very useful. So keep that all in mind as you're thinking about these projects, and let me know what you came up with. And I hope you have a great day full of creativity, and I'll see you tomorrow on Life's Potluck Buffet.